Godthany Damn Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Death Cab For Cutie album, Kintsugi. Famed Washington indie rock act who came up in the mid-2000s off of the wave of popularity that indie rock was seeing at the time, Death Cab For Cutie. Aiding the Death Cab For Cutie buzz was also frontman Ben Gibbard, who was actually seeing quite a bit of commercial and critical success with the indie-tronic synth-pop side project he was working in at the time. They just released their debut LP, The Postal Service. Great album, highly recommended. And it also helped that Death Cab had recently released their most critically acclaimed album yet, Transatlanticism, an easygoing, clean, and profoundly sad rock album. At this point, the band had creatively peaked after spending years mellowing out their punk influences, which are much more obvious on their debut LP, and over here, and with LPs such as the Photo album, moving into slower, subtler territory, with a sharper focus on lyrics with very melancholy, introspective themes. As far as the records that followed plans, it was very clear that Ben Gibbard was in a different place emotionally. These records, in my opinion, are not really as emotionally potent, but Gibbard's talents as a songwriter remained, especially on the album Codes and Keys, a record that I would say is commendably catchy. Now, as far as this new LP goes, I wasn't really going into it looking for Death Cab to come through with a visceral or an explosive album or anything like that. I, over the years, have kind of come to expect Death Cab to appeal to a different set of emotions than most rock bands do. But maybe even for Death Cab, this new album of theirs over here is just a little too mild. For example, the opening track on here, No Room in Frame, which has maybe just a faintly danceable driving kick drum and some very clean guitars, a bit of a glossy synth lead, and I don't know, just kind of feels a little bland. And on the opposite side of that spectrum is the song Black Sun, a sad standout in the track list here. And it's not the kind of sadness that is in your face or overt or anything like that. It's a bit of a slow burner. The sadness of this track kind of itches at the back of my head until I realize just how depressing the song is by the end of it, especially with imagery in the refrain here of a black sun revolving around the protagonist in the lyrics. I tend to favor the more stripped back and simple songs in the track list here, like the song You've Haunted Me All My Life, which has a bit of an acoustic intro, very desolate sounding song, and there are some pristine guitars in the second half, some great melodic phrasing here with some drums that kind of pop in and add a groove to the song. And the song Hold No Guns is an acoustic ballad that is very charming, even though it kind of has some incredibly chilling lyrics. And on the refrain of this song, we have Ben Gibbard singing, My love, why do you run? For in my hand I hold no guns. There is a lonesome piano ballad that ends the album off that feels like a pretty special moment. And it's songs like these that, to me, say that Death Cab, when they want to be and they're focused on this, they are still masters of this clean, sad, contemplative rock music. But the more upbeat tracks in the track listing here tend to be just a little middle of the road for me. Not only are they unbearably middle of the road, but they don't really leave me with that much to report on. I think there are a few tracks here that could have slipped in very snugly into the Codes and Keys track list without really ruining the flow of the album. Songs like Little Wanderer or Ghosts of Beverly Drive. There are a few tracks on the back end of this album that stand out, but not necessarily for the best reasons. The song Good Help is hard to find. Features a bit of a danceable beat, but the very prominent, peppy drums don't really fit the slow motion guitars, neither do they complement Ben Gibbard's kind of even-tempered vocal delivery. I think they take away from Ben a little bit, as well as the emotion of the track, which feels so faint already a lot of the time on this album. I kind of feel like I have this old, crappy radio, and I am just very frustratingly trying to tune into the emotions of this album, and I can't tell if it's because my receiver's bad or if the signal itself is kind of getting weak. That is pretty much how I feel about this record. I'm pretty indifferent toward it, honestly. There are some highlights here, but it's not like they're so great that they're gonna have me driving back to this album anytime soon. The songs on this album that I do like, I wouldn't say I like them because they're particularly special or anything like that. I think what Death Cab does on the highlights from this album is that they merely prove that they can still go through the motions of making a decent Death Cab song. As far as the other cuts on here, they're either incredibly forgettable or they just have a few subtle qualities that just kind of knock the sound quality off slightly to the point where, I don't know, just something doesn't quite feel right, whether it be the huge booming drums on El Dorado or the out of nowhere dance beat on Good Help. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this album. Transition. If you've given this Death Cab album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Death Cab for Cutie, forever.